My name is Rebecca Matthews, and I'm 29 years old. When I close my eyes now, I can still see the balloons swaying gently against the ceiling, hear the sound of children laughing in the backyard, smell the vanilla buttercream frosting on the cake shaped like a teddy bear. It was supposed to be the happiest day of our small family. My daughter Emma's first birthday. One full year of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, teething pain, and pure overwhelming love. 1 year of watching her learn to smile, to crawl, to stand on wobbly legs while holding onto the coffee table like it was the edge of the world. My husband Daniel had been planning this party for weeks. He ordered decorations online, hired a photographer, invited family and close friends. He wanted everything perfect because Emma deserved perfect. And for most of the afternoon, it felt like we had actually pulled it off. The house was full of warmth. My mother was in the kitchen cutting fruit. Daniel's parents were playing with Emma in the living room. Our friends were scattered across the backyard, talking and laughing under string lights we had hung the night before. Everything felt right, everything felt safe. Then Daniel walked up to me while I was refilling the punch bowl. His face looked strange, not angry, not sad, just blank. Like someone had drained all the color out of him and left only the outline. He stood there for a second too long without speaking, and that was when my stomach started to tighten. I turned toward him and smiled, trying to ignore the feeling crawling up my spine. "Hey, you okay?" I asked. He did not smile back. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time or maybe the last time, and then he said it. Quiet but clear enough that I heard every single word. "I got a DNA test. We need to talk outside." The punch ladle slipped from my hand and clattered against the table. Juice splashed onto the tablecloth, bright red spreading like a stain I could not take back. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around us, people were still laughing. Music was still playing. Emma was still giggling in someone's arms. But in that moment, the entire world collapsed into those 9 words. I followed him outside in a daze. My legs moved without permission. My brain was screaming questions I could not form into sentences. We walked past the side of the house into the narrow space between the fence and the garage where no one could see us. He stopped and turned around. His hands were shaking. I had never seen Daniel shake before. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and held it toward me. On the screen was an email. A PDF attachment with a logo I did not recognize. I did not need to read the whole thing. The summary at the top was enough. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words blurred. My knees felt weak. I looked up at him and his eyes were wet, but his jaw was locked tight like he was trying not to break. "When did you do this?" I whispered. 2 weeks ago, he said. His voice cracked. I had been walking around this house for 2 weeks trying to figure out how to say it, and I felt like I was falling. Like the ground beneath me had opened up and I was just waiting to hit bottom. But the worst part was not the shock. It was the look on his face. Because Daniel was not just hurt. He was destroyed. And somewhere deep in my chest, underneath the panic and confusion, a terrible realization started to rise. I had no idea how this had happened. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If Daniel was not Emma's biological father, then I needed to figure out who was. And I needed to figure it out fast because the man I loved was already halfway out the door. I stood there staring at the test results on his phone, my brain scrambling to make sense of something that should not have been possible. My hands started shaking so hard I had to grip the fence to steady myself. "Daniel, this does not make sense," I said. My voice sounded foreign, too high, too desperate. I have never been with anyone else. Not once, not ever. He looked at me like he wanted to believe it. Like some part of him was still searching my face for proof that this was all a mistake. But the paper in his hand was not a mistake. It was a lab report. It was science. It was final. "Then explain it," he said quietly. "Because I've been trying to come up with any explanation that does not destroy us, and I cannot find one." I felt my chest tighten, felt tears start to burn at the edges of my vision. My mind raced backward through the timeline. Emma was born 9 months after a trip we took to the mountains for our anniversary. I remembered that trip clearly. The cabin, the fireplace, the rain that kept us inside for 2 days. I remembered feeling so connected to him, so sure that we were building something strong. And I had gotten pregnant. We had celebrated. We had cried together in the bathroom when the test showed 2 lines. I looked at Daniel now, and the distance between us felt impossibly wide even though we were standing 3 feet apart. "I need to see that test again," I said. "I need to see the full report." He handed me the phone. I scrolled through the document slowly, reading every line, every number, every clinical phrase that felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. And then I saw something, a small line near the bottom. Sample collected and submitted by Daniel Matthews. I looked up sharply. You did this yourself? You did not go to a clinic? He nodded. I used one of those home kits. I sent it in myself. My heart started pounding, not with fear this time, but with something else. A flicker of hope mixed with anger. Did you follow the instructions exactly? I asked. Did you make sure the sample was not contaminated? Did you double-check everything? His face shifted slightly. Doubt crept in. I think so, he said. But he did not sound sure anymore. Daniel, I said, my voice firmer now, those tests can be wrong. Contamination, lab error, mishandling, there are a dozen ways this could be inaccurate. We need to do this again. At a real clinic. With a real doctor. For the first time since this nightmare started, I saw something crack in his expression. Not relief, but hesitation. The kind that meant he had not considered he might be wrong. Okay, he said finally. We will do it again. But even as he said it, I could feel the weight pressing down on both of us. Because whether the test was wrong or right, the fact that he had done it at all meant something had already broken. Trust. That invisible thread that held us together was frayed now, maybe beyond repair. We walked back toward the house in silence. The party was still going. Emma was smashing her hands into a piece of cake while everyone cheered. I stood in the doorway watching her, my beautiful girl, and felt my heart splinter into pieces. Because no matter what happened next, no matter what the second test said, this moment had changed everything. Daniel had looked at our daughter and doubted. And I had looked at my husband and realized that love, no matter how strong, could still be fragile. 3 days later, we sat in a clinic waiting for results that would either rebuild us or bury us. And I had no idea which one I was more afraid of. The clinic was sterile and cold. White walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of disinfectant that made my stomach turn. Daniel sat beside me in the waiting room, but we were not really together. We were two people occupying the same space, breathing the same air, but living in completely different realities. He had not touched me since the party. Not a hug, not a hand on my shoulder, nothing. At night, he slept on the couch. During the day, he moved through the house like a ghost, present but unreachable. Emma noticed. She kept reaching for him, and he would hold her for a few seconds before handing her back to me like she burned. It was killing me. The nurse called us back. We followed her down a hallway into a small office where a doctor sat behind a desk with a folder in front of him. He looked tired, like he had delivered bad news too many times and had learned to keep his face neutral. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, he said, gesturing for us to sit. We did. My hands were clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned white. The doctor opened the folder and glanced at the papers inside. Then he looked up at us, and I knew before he even spoke. The test confirms that Daniel is not the biological father, he said gently. The room tilted. I heard Daniel exhale sharply beside me, a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. My mouth opened, but no words came. My brain could not process what I was hearing because it was impossible. It was medically, factually, impossibly wrong. That cannot be right, I said, my voice shaking. I have never been with anyone else. Not once in my entire life. The doctor looked at me with something close to sympathy, but it felt hollow. I understand this is difficult, he said. But the results are conclusive. The probability of paternity is 0%. There is no genetic match between Daniel and the child. I turned to Daniel, desperate, searching his face for something, anything that told me he still believed me. But he was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the arms of the chair like he was trying not to fall apart. Daniel, please, I whispered. You know me. You know I would never do this. He did not look at me. He just stood up, thanked the doctor in a voice that sounded hollow, and walked out of the room. I sat there for another moment, frozen, unable to move. Then I forced myself to stand, forced myself to follow him out into the parking lot where he was already sitting in the car with the engine running. The drive home was silent. When we got back to the house, Daniel went straight to the bedroom and started packing a bag. I stood in the doorway watching him, my heart breaking with every item he folded and placed inside. Where are you going? I asked, even though I already knew. My parents, he said without looking at me. I need space to think. Daniel, please, I said, my voice cracking. Please do not leave. We can figure this out. There has to be an explanation. He stopped packing and finally looked at me. His eyes were red, his face pale. What explanation, Rebecca? What possible explanation is there? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because I did not have one. I had no answer, no defense, no proof. Just the desperate, terrified certainty that I had never betrayed him. He zipped the bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked past me without another word. I heard the front door open, then close. I heard his car start. I heard him drive away. And then I was alone. Alone with a daughter who looked just like me, a marriage that was falling apart, and a mystery I could not solve. That night, I sat on the floor of Emma's room watching her sleep, and I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, even if it destroyed me. Even if it meant digging into places I did not want to go. Because my daughter deserved a father, and my husband deserved the truth, whatever that truth turned out to be. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. I barely ate. I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment of the past 2 years, searching for a crack, a gap, some forgotten night or blurry memory that could explain what the DNA test had shown. But there was nothing. I called Daniel 4 times. He did not answer. I left voicemails that I deleted and re-recorded because I did not know what to say. How do you defend yourself against something you did not do? How do you prove a negative? On the 3rd day, I called my best friend Lydia. She came over within an hour, took one look at me and wrapped me in a hug so tight I almost broke down completely. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the party, about the DNA test, about the clinic, about Daniel leaving. I told her I felt like I was losing my mind because nothing made sense. Lydia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back and stared at me with an expression I could not read. "Rebecca," she said slowly, "have you considered that maybe there is a medical explanation?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if something happened that you do not remember? What if you were drugged, or what if there was some kind of medical procedure or something during your pregnancy?" The words hit me like ice water. I had not even considered that. My mind immediately jumped to the worst possibilities, but Lydia reached out and grabbed my hand. "I am not saying it is that," she said quickly. "I am just saying if you are sure you did not cheat, then maybe there is something else, something medical. Something rare." That word rare stuck with me. I spent the rest of that night researching. I went down rabbit holes I did not know existed. I read about fertility treatments, embryo mix-ups, artificial insemination errors. I read about cases where women had gotten pregnant without realizing they had been inseminated with the wrong sperm at a clinic, but I had never been to a fertility clinic. I had gotten pregnant naturally, or at least I thought I had. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A case study about a woman who had undergone a routine medical procedure and had been inseminated without her knowledge or consent. It was rare. It was illegal. But it had happened. I sat back from my laptop, my heart pounding. I pulled up my medical records from the year before Emma was born. I scrolled through appointments, vaccinations, routine checkups, and then I saw it. A visit I had almost forgotten. 8 weeks before I got pregnant, I had gone to a walk-in clinic for a bladder infection. It was a Saturday. Daniel had been out of town for work. I had seen a doctor I did not know, a man who seemed distracted and rushed. He had prescribed antibiotics and sent me on my way. I did not think anything of it at the time. But now, sitting in the dark with my laptop glowing in front of me, I felt something twist in my gut. I looked up the clinic. It had closed 6 months ago. I searched the doctor's name. And what I found made my hands start shaking. He had been under investigation. Multiple complaints. Allegations of misconduct. And then, buried in a news article from 8 months ago, I found it. Dr. Marcus Field was being sued by 3 women who claimed he had artificially inseminated them without their consent during routine gynecological exams. My vision blurred, my chest tightened. I remembered that appointment. I remembered feeling uncomfortable. I remembered the exam taking longer than usual, but I had trusted him. I had not questioned it. I grabbed my phone and called Daniel. This time he answered. "Rebecca, I cannot do this right now," he said, his voice flat. "Daniel, listen to me," I said, my words tumbling out too fast. "I think I know what happened. I think I was assaulted. I think a doctor inseminated me without my consent." Silence. Long, heavy silence. "What are you talking about?" he finally asked. I told him everything. The clinic, the doctor, the lawsuit, the timing. And when I finished, I heard him breathe out slowly on the other end of the line. "I'm coming home," he said. 2 hours later, we were sitting together at the kitchen table, staring at the articles on my laptop. And for the first time since the party, Daniel looked at me like he believed me. But belief was not enough. We needed proof. And getting that proof was going to mean facing something darker than either of us had ever imagined. It took 3 weeks to get the answers we needed. 3 weeks of phone calls, lawyers, medical records requests, and DNA samples sent to labs that specialized in forensic genealogy. Daniel moved back home after that first night. He did not say much, but he was there. He held Emma. He made coffee in the mornings. He sat beside me while we waited. And slowly, carefully, we started to rebuild. The breakthrough came from a genealogy database. We had submitted Emma's DNA to see if we could find any biological relatives that might lead us to the truth. When the results came back, we found a match. A half-sibling. A child who had been born 4 years ago to a woman named Tara Nichols. One found her on social media. She lived 2 states away. I sent her a message explaining who I was and why I was reaching out. She responded within an hour. "I had been waiting for someone to contact me," she wrote. "I knew there had to be others." We scheduled a video call. Tara was kind, but her face carried the same haunted exhaustion I saw in my own mirror every day. She told me her story. She had gone to the same clinic I had. She had seen the same doctor. She had gotten pregnant weeks later and had no idea how. Her husband had left her. Her family had stopped speaking to her. She had spent years believing she was losing her mind. "He did this to at least 6 of us," she said, her voice steady but strained. "Maybe more. We are still finding each other." I felt sick, not just for myself, but for all of us. For the women whose lives have been violated in the most intimate, irreversible way. For the children born from something we never consented to. For the families torn apart by a man who had weaponized trust. Daniel sat beside me during the call. When it ended, he reached over and took my hand. It was the first time he had touched me in weeks. "I am so sorry," he whispered. I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. "You did not know. I should have believed you," he said. "I should have trusted you from the start." We reported everything to the police. An investigation was opened. Dr. Marcus Field was arrested 2 months later. The trial is still ongoing, but the evidence is overwhelming. DNA, medical records, testimonies from multiple women. He will never practice medicine again. And if there is any justice left in this world, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. But justice does not undo damage. It does not erase the nights I spent sobbing on the bathroom floor. It does not give Daniel back the trust that was stolen from him. And it does not change the fact that Emma, my beautiful, innocent daughter, was born from something horrific. For a long time, I struggled with that. I looked at her and felt love so fierce it hurt, but I also felt grief. Grief for the way she was supposed to come into this world. Grief for the choice that was taken from me. Daniel struggled too. Not with Emma, he loved her completely, but with the weight of what had happened. We started therapy. Both together and separately. Slowly, painfully, we learned how to talk again. How to trust again. How to be parents together in the aftermath of something neither of us had words for. Emma turned 2 last month. We had a small party, just us, Lydia, and Daniel's parents. There was cake, there were balloons, there was laughter. And when Daniel looked at me across the table, I saw something I'd not seen in a long time. Peace, not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. We are not the same people we were before. We never will be, but we are still here, still fighting, still loving, still standing. Because sometimes survival is not about going back to who you were. It is about becoming someone strong enough to carry what happened and keep moving forward. Emma does not know the story yet. One day, when she is older, we will tell her. But for now, she's just a little girl who loves her parents, who laughs too loud, who climbs on everything, who makes us tired and full and grateful. And that is enough. That has to be enough. Because in the end, love is not about biology. It is not about DNA. It is about showing up. It is about choosing each other even when the world gives you every reason to walk away. Daniel chose to stay. I chose to fight. And together, we chose Emma. And that choice, that decision to love her fiercely and completely, no matter how she came into this world, is the only truth that matters now.